Welcome to the Bookish Spell, your cozy corner for all things bookish. I'm Angie, your host, and each week I'll be diving into the magical world of books, sharing reviews, author interviews, and so much more. New episodes drop every Wednesday, so grab a cup of coffee and get ready to turn the page with me.
Well, welcome onto the show. It's nice to finally meet you.
Thank
Why
you
don't
so
you start,
much for
Kay?
having me.
Yes. Why don't you start out by telling us about your book?
So the name of my book is Spells and Spices, and it's essentially a cozy witchy novel.
Love it.
And I wanted a book where you're able to have your latte, wrap yourself in a blanket, and just enjoy the novel. It's filled with magic, it's filled with laughs, tears, found family, romance, and just self-discovery.
I love
Um,
it.
the main reason I wrote this book is because I always wanted to be an author. However, time and life got in the way. And I decided that I really wanted to start. I had a kid and I kind of got lost in being a new mom and having a career. And so I just decided one day that I wanted to start, getting back into my hobbies. And one of my hobbies was reading. And so I read voraciously for an entire year. And what I noticed is that during that process, there was so much self-discovery that I discovered that my favorite genre was that cozy, witchy genre. And so I decided that I wanted to write the book that I wanted to read. I love this genre. And so I wanted to write my own version of it, including aspects that I thought was very sacred and special to me. I wanted to have Caribbean culture involved in some way because I am originally from the Caribbean.
Wow.
And growing up there, you're just surrounded by so much folklore and magic. And I really wanted to capture bits of that in the novel. And of course, I wanted a diverse cast of characters. I wanted anybody of any skin tone or eye color to pick it up and find that, hey, I look like this witch, And so I really got all those concepts. I knew my genre, and then I guess I just needed to figure out my different concepts that I was very passionate about. And so that's when I got everything down on paper and I started writing this novel. And then this novel more or less started to walk and run on its own on the pages. So that's Spells and Spices in a nutshell. It's a witchy fantasy. It's cozy. It's filled with Caribbean elements. And there are moments that you're going to laugh out loud. There's moments you're going to cry and be very hurt and disappointed by some characters, characters that you grow to love. And then you're like, oh, you did that? And then there's going to be that romance. And of course, I didn't want the typical romance. I wanted a romance. There were initially two love interests, and she goes with the one. She didn't go with cute and fuzzy. She went with jagged edges, but good on the inside.
Oh, we love that.
A lot of my readers have reached out to me and they're like, oh, we really like Colin for her. We don't know if we like her with Alexander, but as the writer, I wanted her to be with Alexander. And so I wrote that. Not all the time your love interest is going to be cute and cuddly and have all. I wanted it to mimic reality, that nobody's perfect and that you have to really look at all the qualities of a person and appreciate them as they come, So that's Spells and Spices in a nutshell. Plus, there are actual recipes included.
I love it. We need to talk about the book cover, I think, because your book cover is gorgeous.
Thank you so much.
It is gorgeous. and like the title of your book, like grabbed my attention.
Yeah.
Because my day job, I actually do tarot readings.
Okay.
So like the whole like your genre, this really kind of spoke to me. That is my day job. That's actually been my only job ever.
Oh,
I've never
wow.
been doing anything else up
That's
until
amazing.
now. Yeah, up until now, like doing these bookish type content. So that's like it hit really close to home. So I'm really excited. I haven't got around to reading your book. I will. I tend to be a little bit on the slower side when it comes to reading.
Yeah.
I do have a small business and I'm home running it with my two children. So
Right.
try to read as much as I can. I love reading, but sometimes time doesn't allow it. But I just want to tell you how beautiful the book cover is. And it's just, I'm so excited to start it.
There was actually a story behind the book
Oh,
cover.
yeah.
I have it here.
Beautiful.
So I am a naturally super busy person. I'm a mom. I have a career in microbiology and infection control. You know, it gets so crazy. But I really wanted to carve out that time to write this novel. So I really wanted to be passionate about every aspect of the book. And I told my cover designer, I wanted her to create something that represented the book as well as my personality, as well as the female male main character's personality. And I feel like she gave me two different cover designs. And this is the one I went with because I felt like the color, the vibrancy, the fun, I felt like all that really encapsulated the female main character and also bits of my own personality. Anybody that knows me would look at that book cover and be like, that's you. You
I
know?
love it. It's beautiful. It really is. The color is gorgeous. I love everything about your cover. I have to say that this year, your cover is probably my favorite cover.
Oh, thank you so much.
Really, I love it. It's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Tell us a little bit of how you. So we know that you knew from the moment that you wanted a witchy genre. How did you like? What inspired the story? Like, how did the story begin?
Well, I knew I wanted witchy. I knew I wanted Caribbean. And I sat down, and as a writer, there's always this story rattling around you. And in order to bring it from your head to your fingertips, you really have to sink deep into yourself. And so a lot of the characters, a lot of the situations, a lot of the food, a lot of the experiences, I drew them from my own life and my own experiences. So there is a section where the witches go to enjoy goat yoga. That's something I do on Thursdays with my friends, you know. So I drew that from my own life. Then the magical town of Raven's Peak that's in the book, it's actually this town that I have to drive through to get to work. And it's such a joy driving through that little town because it's so beautiful. It's like this little town lost in this forest. There's so much greenery. The gardens are so beautiful all year round. It's like these beautiful homes just hidden behind the trees, and there's plants everywhere. It's so green. It's just a beautiful drive. And the word magical always pops into my head as I drive along that street to get to work. And so Raven's Peak is actually created out of that inspiration.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And then the love interest in the book. So the female main character, she's from the Caribbean, like me. And the male, her love interest, he's Polish, Eastern European descent. And how they really bond is through through their love for food and sharing their individual cultures through food. And that has a string of truth to it because that's how me and my husband met. I'm from the Caribbean, he's from Poland, and we really connected over food. I introduced him to curry chicken. He introduced me to golonki and stuffed cabbage and pierogies. And that's kind of how we connected and we grew. And so I wove that into the book. So a lot of the book I drew from my own life, as well as just experiences in Georgia. It's such a beautiful state. There's so much to do. And there are certain towns that are just magical, especially during fall and Christmas. You just feel the feels. So that's really where a lot of the inspiration for Spells and Spices came from.
Well, that's amazing to hear that you wrote it from your perspective of your life and just put a magical twist on it, you know? That's
Yeah,
awesome. I love it.
thank you.
So tell us, like, what is your favorite part of the writing process? What do you have there?
My favorite part is developing my characters, and there is one relationship between Aditi, she's the main character, and her grandmother. And I think my favorite part of the writing process was writing their story and writing their personalities and really honing in on their relationship as a grandmother and a granddaughter, and how much love and history and knowledge is passed on from a grandmother to a granddaughter in the kitchen. A lot of their conversations take place while cooking. A lot of their emotional distress takes place in the kitchen. So I think my favorite part was writing that part.
All right. So I am curious to know, since your book is about witchy stuff, is that something that you are interested in your real day-to-day life? Or you just like to read about it? Or
I like to read about it. I think it's very interesting. I do a lot of research, I have a lot of conversations with people, who do practice Wicca, stuff like that. So I find it very interesting. And I do a lot of reading, but also I grew up in Trinidad, and when as a child you're surrounded by so much folklore and so much magic, but because you're in it, you don't know it's different. Only when you're adult and you move away, you realize, oh, when I was a kid, that was not really normal, but it was magic. For example, I always tell people, back home, if you have a headache or a runny nose or a fever, the first thing your mom or your grandmother they would go out in their backyard. They have this big herb garden with all these different herbs, and they can tell you, oh, you have a headache? Okay, let's cut some of this and brew it into a tea on the stove, and that's what you drink. We never really run for the Tylenol or, we always go to the backyard and try the herbs first. And another thing is, like, if you're sick or you're going through something difficult, the first thing is, let's bubble a pot, which really means cook a soup. And my grandmother always used to tell me, if you're cooking for somebody who's sick, as you stir the soup, you close your eyes and you think of that person healthy and happy and thriving. And in that way, somehow you imbue the soup with like healing and happiness, so that when the person eats the soup, that's how they feel. And even today, home in my home back in Trinidad, you make this big pot of fish broth, and you just sit as a family around the table and you eat this soup when it's rainy, and it just feels like togetherness and comfort. And it was things like that we were surrounded by. They would always teach us to be very respectful of nature. You don't just pick a fruit randomly. You wait, you appreciate nature. There was a lot of respect for the natural world, a lot of love and respect for animals. I feel like growing up home in Trinidad, I was so in tune with like nature, the changing of the seasons, the potential in different herbal remedies, salves that you would make for your skin. It was just, now that I look back, I always tell people I grew up surrounded by this magic. We didn't use the words magic or witchcraft but you were surrounded by it. You know, you grew up in it. You grew up with a lot of things that not necessarily are normal, you know. So that's kind of what I wanted in the book, because also in Trinidad there's something called bush medicine. It's like when you're sick, you go to this old lady and she has all this like knowledge about the body and the herbs, and the first thing she's like, you need some fever grass and you need to tie it in a knot and boil it on the stove and make a tea, you know? So it was stuff like that. We never used that word green witchery, but it's like you grew up in it and you didn't even know. So I use that as an inspiration in the book as well.
I love that. I mean, it's kind of, when you think about it, herbal remedies, when we use these herbs and spices to heal us, it makes the most sense, because I mean, let's say, you know, God put us down here and created us. Of course, He's going to give us the medicine that we need to heal.
Right.
It is kind of sad that we kind of shied away, especially here in America, so far away from that now today. I guess I'm what you call it, like people call it punchy mom.
Yeah.
So I do try to incorporate a lot of like organic, natural stuff for my children. But now today that is considered like silly, you know, especially in America. But
and the other thing is, like, there was this unspoken magic about a home cooked meal on a Sunday. My grandmother, she did not want to hear about us buying food out. She's like, Sunday we get together in the kitchen, gather stuff from the garden, and we make a home cooked hearty meal. And I feel like there's magic in a home cooked hearty meal that you sit on the table and eat as a family. And she always told me that one of the ways in which Caribbean women, show our love and is through our food. So if you love someone, you cook them a hearty meal that's going to nourish them and make them feel good. And it kind of trickled down into my own marriage now. Like, as a wife, like, I want to cook him that nice, healthy, hearty home meal at least once for the week, because that's one of the ways in which you say you love that person. So there was magic in cooking a meal as well, now that I look back. And I feel like I tried to incorporate that into the novel as well.
That's beautiful. I do feel like there is magic when you're cooking. There was a little couple that I always used to watch on TikTok. I can't find them anymore now, but they lived in like a little camper, and it was full of like herbs and spices and very like earthy, and they would cook food, and they would always talk about it being like a spell. So like, but it was essentially you're just cooking a meal to eat. And they always explain like spells are real, because you're same way people are doing like love spells or whatnot. You're putting a bunch of ingredients together. That's literally the same thing when it comes to cooking.
Yeah, to nourish your body and make you feel healthy and full and satisfied. I think growing up in the Caribbean, one thing that they stress is that belief in a home cooked meal, the magic in a meal, and like how important that is for your body and your family and just togetherness as a whole.
I love it. I love that you incorporated so much of your life, so much of your growing up, your beliefs, what you were taught into this book. It has to feel truly special for you, this book, because it's so much of you in it, you know?
Yeah.
It is amazing. So are you a traditionally published author, or did you self-publish?
I wanted to self-publish. When I was writing this book, I wanted to go ahead and self-publish because I wanted control over what was put in the book. I wanted control over my cover. I wanted control over my story. I didn't want to be told that We Like Her with Colin Moore. I wanted to write it how it existed in my heart. And also, I knew I would encounter the issues of, not as much sales or not as much visibility, but I wanted it to be my journey and I wanted it to be completely my story. And so I decided this first book, I was definitely going to self-publish. And the Bookstagram community has been so incredibly supportive of indie authors. The amount of love and support I've received from the Bookish online community has been so overwhelming that there's not a day I don't regret going indie. Maybe in the future with my other books, because I am working on another one, maybe I would consider traditional. But for right now, I think I really am happy with the indie choice.
Beautiful. Speaking to a lot of authors, I speak to an author at least once a week. Majority of them are indie authors. I only talk to like a handful of traditionally published. It is interesting to see their different views and perspective. This is essentially why I love doing this as an aspiring writer myself. I feel like when you're going in it within your first book, it's always that you have this story deep in your heart that you need to tell.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like going self-publishing route is probably the best for everyone that is having a story that they want to get out there. And I feel like it gives you good practice. It helps you kind of know the ins and out of the writing community, so that you are prepared when you kind of eventually go that traditional route.
Yeah. And I feel like there's also this feeling of achievement when you do the indie way, because every single thing that an indie author accomplishes, it's because they had to teach themselves, they had to learn from online, they had to take a course. So from the cover to the editing, everything, it is the indie author's responsibility. So they do put so much work into producing a novel. And I think that's something every indie author should definitely be proud of.
Yes, exactly. It is. I've talked to so many people, and the steps that you guys take to get this like out on the shelf or online, it's a lot of work. It's basically building your own business from the ground up,
Yeah. And I feel like it's so important. Like, I know like some people in the past have read like posts, etc., where people prefer to read traditional authors instead of indie authors because they don't think the indie books are as good. I don't know where that notion came from, but I was reading, like when I was trying to decide whether to go traditional or indie, and I realized that some of my favorite books this year came from indie authors, and there's some books that were so raved about. And when I read them, I mean, I was a little, So I feel like I wanted to be in that group of people that are still emerging and trying to climb their way out and like show that we are authors too. Just because we went indie and self-published, that doesn't mean we're not as good as a traditional author.
I feel like maybe a lot of people don't know what indie author is, because I was one of them back when I was a young kid. I thought, like, this is actually silly thinking about it. I haven't thought about this in years. When I was like a teenager, 13, 14, I'm reading, I thought an indie author meant a book from a different country. So I'm thinking, like, how am I going to understand this book? I didn't know what an indie author was.
So maybe there is also that confusion. Maybe people just don't know what an indie author is,
Because
I will say some of the best books I've read this year, I have been blown away. They were indie authors.
Yes. I say this all the time too. I mean, just based off what I'm doing now currently, all these interviews and stuff, I am reading mainly indie author books, and I am loving it way more than traditional. I'm still reading some traditional here and there, but the indie author books, they are, they really are. They're amazing. And I feel like now, especially with social media, people are more open and
Yeah.
wanted to read self-publishing authors. Maybe because really back, let's just say 10, 15 years ago, I don't actually think people understood what an indie published author was. Which I
Yeah.
definitely did not.
Yeah.
So
But
it
I'm
is
so happy that we're at a point in our lives where we can do that through Amazon, through Ingram, these different avenues. It's so amazing that we have the opportunity to do that. So that's also pretty awesome.
I didn't know this, but a guy I spoke to, his episode came out today. His name's Scott Young. He is a self-published, and he also has his book on Barnes and Noble.
Oh,
I
yeah. Yeah.
didn't know that you could do that. I thought that was
I read about that. I read that you can do that. And I've actually met some indie authors that actually reached out to Barnes and Nobles in their local communities.
oh yeah.
And they're able to have book signings, they're able to meet customers, have events, and also some Barnes and Nobles would actually have a section for self-published authors.
Yeah, I just read about this or learned about this maybe a week or so ago because I actually wrote a blog post article about Barnes and Nobles. Since COVID, they made such a big transition. Where before COVID, they were actually kind of going bankrupt and shutting down a lot of stores.
Yeah.
It honestly saved them because so many people turned to reading. But what Barnes and Noble did, and what I love, is the reason why they are all so different and unique in every town, because they allow the manager to kind of, represent those local artists, authors,
Yeah.
or have, set it up how they want to, instead of it being just like in the stores. Everything has to be the same.
Yeah.
It's actually more like a local bookshop feel now. is
Yeah.
what they do. I thought that was amazing. I
That
just
is
discovered
amazing.
that.
Because to me, Barnes and Nobles is like the bookstore of bookstores, and I've always been told that you have to be traditionally published to be in there. And I'm realizing that that's not the case. So many of my indie author friends, they're doing signings, they're doing events, so they've really revolutionized and changed with the times as well, which is so amazing for indie authors right now. It's really amazing. I'm so proud of fellow indie authors and the strides that they have been accomplishing. And I always love to shout them out on social media. I learn so much. And the other thing about that I've noticed, they are so helpful to they call us baby authors.
Oh, really?
We just came out with our books. We don't know. And they always, so I've reached out to 3 or 4 different people. They're always so willing to share information, to help you, to repost your books. So it's just such a positive community. I'm really appreciative of it.
They are. I've noticed that the authors within the writers community are pretty amazing. They're so helpful for one another. It really is nice.
Yeah.
What are some books that you said you enjoyed this year? I'm curious to know.
Well, one book that I really enjoyed this year, it's called Lily's Bakery. And basically Lily's Creek's Bakery. And basically it's by an author called B.A. Frank. She's amazing. She's in Georgia. And Georgia, we've met in person. And what I really loved about her, I knew I was going to love her book the minute I opened it, and each chapter starts with a different baked good. And her magic is magical realism in baking and finding yourself and family letting you down and developing found family. It's a very well written book. It makes you want to curl up and enjoy all the feels. And if you're not a baker, like I'm definitely not a baker, you can go out and want to try some of her baked goods. And just the book was phenomenal. The author is she's so amazing. She's so friendly. She's also somebody who helps you out a lot when you have questions as a fellow indie author. I've also, another book that really, I would say, inspired Spells and Spices. I read, this is a traditionally published book. It's called The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sandy Mandana. And I picked that, I can't remember if I picked it up at Barnes and Noble's just because the cover was so interesting. But when I read that book, I was so blown away. It was such a beautifully written book. And what I loved, it was the first witchy book that I had picked up where there was such a diverse cast of characters. And I love that. I love that, you know, being of Indian descent and having an Indian witch in there. It was just, it meant a lot to me. And I felt very inspired by her book. And of course, one of my favorite authors is Juno Dawson. I would read anything she writes. She writes a lot of witchy books, and I really enjoyed that as well. So it's been a combination of witchy, cozy books all year for me. Although now it's December, I'm probably going to head into all the Christmas novels now.
Do you have any? Do you have like a list of what you want to read for December?
I bought several. They're in my library. I have to reacquaint myself with them. But there is one. It's entitled, I believe, The Christmas Witch or The Yuletide Witch. I believe it's a self-published author as well. But she talks about Christmas time and Christmas celebrations from a witch's perspective, and how a lot of the traditions that we label as Christmas really is founded in religion, in Wicca, in different I would say witchcraft, you know. And I thought that was pretty interesting. I remember why I picked it up is that I think I read a comment or something where she said, while you're putting up your Christmas tree this year, know that it's a witchy activity or something like that. The basis of putting up your Christmas tree actually has roots in Yule and different religions across Europe. So I think that's really piqued my interest, and I wanted to read that as well. That's probably going to be my first book.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into that one because I Google a lot of random stuff, and then I Googled about Christmas. So I know a lot of Christmas traditions are originally like they're pagan.
Yes. Yeah. So I thought that was also really interesting. I love reading about stuff like that. I love educating myself. You know. So I'm very interested to dive into that this month.
Sounds interesting. So you said you were working on another book.
Yes. So a lot of my readers, you know, they would message me on Instagram because I wanted to be very accessible to my readers. So I tell them, message me, DM me anytime. I will try my best to respond. And so, you know, a lot of them would message me, oh, I love this character, or I really wish this happened, or I want to see more of this person. So there is one witch in my book. She's a moon-touched witch, meaning she has the ability to produce magical orbs of moonlight from the palm of her hand. And she is really reminiscent of one of my best friends. And so I wanted to continue her story. So I wanted Spells and Spices to be the first book in a series, and I wanted to continue her story. And it's going to take place in South Carolina. So it's going to have a lot of Southern charm because I went on vacation there with my husband, Hilton Head, recently, and we had a really great time. And I said, you know what? I want to place her here and have built a story around that. There's going to be a love interest. Again, another diverse cast of characters. And it's going to be, she's really into crystal magic. Aditi in this book was really into herbs and cooking and the magic food, but Esme, she's really into crystal magic. She's really in tune with the Luna cycles. So, we're gonna take all of that and take it to South Carolina, and she's gonna have a love interest. And so that's where we're at with that.
I love it. I'm so excited. Now, if you have any advice for other fellow authors or inspiring writers, maybe like, are there some courses that you took or videos that you watch on YouTube, or maybe a book that you read to help you with your writing process?
For sure. So as I said again, this entire process has really been truly a learning experience. There are three pieces of advice. The first piece of advice is really sit with yourself and really draft out the ideas for your novel and be very passionate about those ideas, because you're not going to write a great book if you're not passionate about those ideas rolling around in your heart. So I knew I wanted to write cozy witchy, but I didn't really have the other aspects just yet. So it took me a few years to realize I wanted it to be that town that I drove through. I wanted it to have cultural Trinidad culture. I wanted it to be diverse, because I had to really figure out what topics I was truly going to put all my passion in. And I was passionate about Caribbean food and Caribbean culture. And so you have to really figure out what you're passionate about before you write it, because the writing is so much more beautiful when it comes really from here. And then the second thing, you're definitely use beta readers. And I've gotten my beta readers on Instagram. You just put it out there as a post, as a story. Hey, I'm an indie author. I'm writing my first novel. Would anybody be interested in beta reading the first 10 chapters and getting your feedback? They have been invaluable. They would find things that you as the author don't see. And then when they point it out, you're like, that makes sense. Or this makes the story better. Or you know what? You're right. I'm going to include that, because they are readers and they're going to give the feedback they're going to give you. Sometimes can be harsh, but I always say be very open to it, because it's going to make your final product better. I have a beta reader. I met her on Instagram, I believe. And I will say she's very direct. She will tell you, I didn't like this. This is what I would have preferred. How about you do this? And her suggestions were actually very good. And I did include them in my novel. And I think my novel is better for it. And the third thing is that you do need an editor. You do, to produce a really polished final manuscript. I would recommend an editor, and you can find those again on Instagram. And they list their different fees, or you can also use the resource Fiverr. There are some editors on there that, they have different price ranges, and you can choose a price range within your budget. But I will say an editor, to make that final polished manuscript the best it can be, is going to be essential. You can try, I would say edit it yourself to the best of your ability, and even ask a friend or a colleague to see if they can read through and also do some editing, see anything that you missed. And after yourself and after your colleague, the third person should be a professional editor. And you can find those on Bookstagram, or you can find those on Fiverr, or you can hire, like, if you have, the funds, you can really hire from one of those professional companies out there. But an editor makes a difference, because you want to produce a really polished final manuscript.
Yeah. Very good advice. I feel like it's pretty interesting with the beta readers and taking their advice, because you're getting feedback from a reader and this is what
Mhm.
they need they're reading versus like let's say we go back to the traditional published route. And those people that work within that field, they're looking at your book from what's going to sell
Yeah. Yeah.
versus readers are showing you like, hey, this is what we want to read.
Yeah. And
Very
then what I like about why I chose to get my beta readers from Bookstagram and not Fiverr is because Fiverr, you do have to pay them, right? But the Bookstagram people, you're not paying them. So it's not like they feel obligated to give you a good review or to give you a good feedback. They're very honest. You never paid them anything, you know? So they are not really obligated to you. They are actual readers, and this would be their honest thoughts if they picked up your book. For example, a child was born in my book, and I called her Dawn, meaning the beginning, new beginnings. I wanted the baby to represent a new beginning. And my beta reader, she made a very good point. She said throughout the novel, you used Indo-Caribbean names. And this daughter, I think it would be more fitting if you used an Indo-Caribbean name, Aroshi, which also means dawn, the bringer of beginnings, stuff like that. And you know what? I sat there and I said, that is a beautiful name, very original, very beautiful, Aroshi. And honestly, I liked her point. So I changed the baby from Dawn to Aroshi, you know?
I can only imagine these beta readers who made these suggestions and you put them in your book and they're like, oh, now your book is out and published. Reading it like, I made that suggestion.
Yeah. And you know, I think she was one of my favorite beta readers. Like sometimes when I got her feedback, I was like, you know, but she was one of my favorite readers because her honesty was it was so real, you know. She told me, Kristen, I think this character is very dramatic, and if she was a real person standing next to me, I would probably want to fall over. And I said, you know what? She is very dramatic. You are right. She is quite dramatic. Maybe I can tone her down because if she's going to be my female male character, I don't want my readers to be like, oh God, she's so dramatic, you know? I wanted her to be dramatic, but not too much, you know? So I had to tone her down a bit. You know, after I read through the manuscript, I'm like, you know what? She's right. So the beta readers play such a crucial role.
That's amazing. That's good advice. I feel other listeners would really like to hear that. That is really good advice. All right, so I want to ask you a few questions that are non-related to your writing process. Little get to know the author section. So one of my questions is if you have any hobbies or interests outside of writing.
I do enjoy cooking. I love to cook. I love to try recipes from different cultures and cuisines and see if I can do it. And I think the kitchen is my safe space. I love cooking. I don't like doing the dishes. So my husband and I have a pact. I can cook, he'll do the dishes.
Oh, nice.
So he eats, you know. So he does the dishes. And also I love being out in nature. I love a good nature walk. I mean, during the summer when the temperatures were better and not like freezing right now, we would go waterfall chasing throughout Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee. And I think I just love the outdoors. I love hiking, nature walks. And I'm a mom, first time mom. My toddler, he's 3 now. So I love spending time with my son. He amazes me every single day. I love doing stuff with him and just building those memories. He loves being in the kitchen too. So I'm passing it down to my son.
Beautiful.
You know, we're cooking, we're making cookies, we're making blueberry muffins. The curry chicken, he's probably gonna have to wait a while because too many spices going on in the kitchen. So yeah, outside of writing, I love nature. I love outdoors. I love my family.
Beautiful. So what's one of your go-to comfort meals that you cook?
Well, that's super easy because I'm feeling to eat it right now.
Oh,
It's
nice.
something called pilau in the Caribbean. It's like rice and peas and carrots and meat, and it's all like cooked slowly with coconut milk and herbs and spices.
Oh,
And you just cook it, you cover it with the coconut milk, and then you just cook it on low, and the rice just absorbs all that flavor. It's called pilau, or some cultures call it mixed rice, but it's my comfort food, and I like to eat it with like a spicy chutney. So,
oh, that's
yeah,
delicious.
that's definitely my comfort food.
Sounds good. Do you have a favorite movie or TV show?
Hmm.
You watch TV or movies often?
I I fixate on certain series. I'm not a TV watcher, but there are certain things I would watch. I think most recently I watched A Castle for Christmas with Brooke Shields, and I really enjoyed that. So I think I'm into the I know I'm gonna probably get a lot of mixed reactions, but I really like the cheesy rom-com movies.
Oh, those are my favorite. The Hallmark movies are
Yes.
so good. And
The one
I
the
love because
ones
they're like
where other
normal.
people are rolling their eyes, I really like it.
No, they are good. And I love because they're like no more than an hour and like 30 minutes
Yeah,
long.
yeah.
Yeah, movie. But they are, they're really
I
cute.
really enjoy them. I really enjoy them. And now is the season to just sit and watch them. I gobble them all up.
Yes, they're so good. I last Christmas time I got the Hallmark subscription. It was so good.
I know. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the romantic comedies.
Yeah. It was so good. I just want to ask, what's a surprising fact that most people don't know about you, or something fun that some people don't know about you?
Oh, well, a lot of people, they always wonder why I panic when asked to drive somewhere that's out of my comfort zone. It's because I don't know how to drive on the highways or the freeways. I can only use the like local community roads because I'm always so nervous to be on the road. Um, Another fun fact about me is my absolute best friend in the world is my sister, who everyone thinks we're twins. We'd go out and people's like, Kristen, I'm like, it's not me, And we look almost identical, but we're not twins. We're 4 years apart. But I feel like in another life we were twins because she knows what I'm thinking, she knows what I'm feeling. If I had to choose one person who knows me inside out, it's my sister.
Aw, I love
Yeah.
it.
I feel like in another life we were twins. She can read me like a book.
Oh,
I can put up my best facade and she would see through it. Even when I can't see the truth of a situation or my feelings, she will hit it straight on.
well,
Straight
it's amazing to have someone like that in your life. That's beautiful.
on. Yes.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
I'm definitely a morning person. No matter what happens at night, I will automatically get up at 6:30. I think it's from my college days, having to go to university or get up to study, or I don't know. Even if I tell myself I want to sleep in, I want to enjoy the feeling of sleeping in, my body automatically gets up at 6:30. I'm that person awake on the weekends when the whole house is asleep.
I mean, that's probably nice.
But it's my coffee reading time, so
That was going to be my last question for you, was if you're a coffee or a tea person, or maybe both.
I'm both, I would say. I have to have a coffee in the morning, but throughout the day or even before bed, I always have tea. And my favorite tea is Earl Grey.
Oh, yeah.
It's my absolute favorite tea.
Mm. There's a different, another Earl Grey. I forgot what it's called, but they had like a little, like a lady's name on it. Did you
You
try that?
know, I haven't. Is it Lady Grey? No.
Maybe
I
it's
think I've seen something like that at the grocery store.
good. You should try it. Because Earl Grey is one of my favorites. The Lady Grey is really good too.
Yeah,
It's
I'll try it.
it's really nice. It's like Earl Grey, but not as potent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's really good. It's nice. How
Starbucks
do you-
has a good Earl Grey. It's called London Fog, and they have the foam and stuff. It's really good.
I had that before. That is delicious.
Yes.
How do you drink your coffee?
I always drink it black in the morning. I can't do too much sugar or cream in the morning. It just has to be black. I'm waking up. I just need the other thing about me is my coffee has to be super hot. I tell my husband I want it to burn my organs hot. I like it, my coffee hot, black, in my favorite mug.
So, actually, I have one more question then before we go. How do you get your coffee so hot?
Well, believe it or not, I would use the coffee maker, but then I would pop it in the microwave for like 10 seconds.
Okay. I was thinking about this just the other day because I have a Keurig coffee and I have one of those Nespresso ones.
Yeah.
Got me. I don't know if it's just me. Maybe because I got older, I need my coffee to be hotter. But I feel like they get cold so fast.
They do. Or when you take it out, it's like lukewarm at best. Yeah, that's why I blitz mine in the microwave.
Because I do remember there was a time when the Keurigs first came out. Because I remember I got one for Christmas. Anyone who knows me, I am a coffee obsessed person. I drink coffee morning, noon, and night. I have coffee before I go to bed. Like that. But I remember when Keurigs first came out, they had the option where you could set the temperature.
Oh,
how
nice.
Hot. But they don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I realized, I don't know if my coffee maker is just old. I've had it for like 500 years. But I realized every time I make coffee, it was always just lukewarm at best. And that's like a no-no, Mm-hmm. So maybe I need a new coffee machine. I'll ask them.
There you go. That's a good idea. All right, friends. So before we go, tell us and our listeners, where can we buy your books?
So Spells and Spices is currently on Amazon, and also I may transition to Barnes and Noble's online, but for now, Spells and Spices is available on Amazon.
Beautiful. All right. Well, it was a pleasure speaking with you. I really had a good time. And I will let you know when I start Spells and Spices. I'm super excited.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. As an indie author, being able to do a podcast like this is really amazing. So thank you for the opportunity. I had so much fun chatting with you. I thought I would be nervous, but your personality is really calming. So
thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Enjoy your dinner, and I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Bookish Spell. I hope you enjoyed our magical bookish journey together. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And feel free to leave a review. It really helps. I'll be back next Wednesday with more enchanting stories and author insights. Until next time, keep the magic alive in your hearts and on your bookshelves.